Hi, this is Kirk Davis with CAMPS, the Center for Advanced Manufacturing, Puget Sound. I'm here with Randy Gardiner. Uh, Randy and I were discussing his years of leadership and his current role as a growth coach for businesses. And this topic of leadership comes up over and over again. Randy has extensive background in leadership and manufacturing. Randy, I'm very excited to have you talk to us today and share these ideas. You and I have previewed these a little bit, and I think you're right on the mark here.
No, thanks. Thanks, Kirk. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I've been in business over 40 years, been a leader in business. And, my perspective and experience with leadership has changed, as I've grown and as I've watched other leaders lead their businesses and grow. And there isn't one specific formula for leadership. There are some fundamental concepts which I'll be going through with you today. And, I prepared maybe a couple dozen slides, not a little bit less, to bring the points home in discussing at least my experience with leadership and where it is today. So as I think today, we've got some spectacular national, if not world leaders that surround us here in the Pacific Northwest, whether it's Pete Carroll or Bill Gates or Anna Marie Kause, the president of the University of Washington. Of course, Howard Schultz and the others are just really fantastic leaders, but they're all different. They all have a different style, a different personality, but they are very successful at what they do. So,
I think those are great
and
examples,
different.
by the way. Yeah,
Pardon me?
I think those are great examples
Yeah,
from the Northwest, and they're world-class leaders and world-class successes.
absolutely. So when my perspective on leadership has also evolved, and today I took a look at some words and some descriptions of what leaders are over the internet, and there are a lot of characteristics that people like to see in leaders, and in no way could I describe all of that in one time today. But it really, in my experience, it boils down to 5 fundamentals, and it starts with leadership in vision, culture, strategy, structure, and execution. And they're almost sequential in a way, because you have to have that vision first in order to develop your culture, and then your strategy, and the execution and operational capabilities. So I'm going to go through each of those and provide my perspective on that. One of the great authors in business is Jim Collins, and Jim Collins came out with a book called Good to Great, and he's got a couple of other books that are out as well. And in his books, Good to Great, he describes a couple of observations. He interviewed the leaders and researched the about two or 300 businesses, always looking for what was it that made companies great, not just good, but great. And one of the things he found was that these businesses that were great always had a passion for what their mission was, and a passion for what they did. And in that passion, they found a way that they could be the very best in the world at what they did. And also, they matched that up with being very, very clear on what drove their economic engine. And when he put that all together, he came up with this concept called BHAG. And that's where this core purpose of a business, or the passion of the business, meets with their core competencies, the thing that they can do better than anybody else in the world, and their clarity on their economic engine, or the profit per X. When they combined that, they came at the center of this with a concept called the BHAG, or the big, hairy, audacious goal.
You bet.
And that big, hairy, audacious goal really challenged us to drive. In the BHAG, you look at a goal out there for 10 to 30 years. Now, 30 years is really,
It's hard to comprehend.
yeah, it's too far out for most companies. So really looking at a 10-year BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal, and defining that so that it challenges your business and challenges you to greatness. And you're not sure how you're going to get there, but you know that that is something that is possible for your company to achieve. And it reinforces your fundamental business characteristics. So in this vision piece, what I find is most compelling for companies is to describe the destination. Just having, when you come into work every day and you have a boss tell you what to do, that's not too inspiring. But when you come into a business every day and you have a boss, and this doesn't necessarily just relegated to the top guy at a company, the leader in a production planning department, the leader in a marketing department, the leader in an engineering department, they can also describe this destination of what they want to see their organization achieve or what they want their organization to be like in the future.
So it can actually filter down throughout the entire company. It's not
Absolutely.
not just one big idea for the CEO. It's
correct. When you have this vision for the destination, people start to put those pieces of the puzzle in place and are able to do their job with more meaning, more clarity around where they're going as an organization. It helps align everybody's activities and gives them that purpose for coming to work and a purpose for doing the work that they do. And it also helps them prioritize, because in building a future, there's always some fundamental blocks that you have to put in place first before you get to the next blocks to put in place and so forth. So that helps with that prioritization.
So Randy, before you go on, having a BHAG, sounds like a big, hairy, audacious project, right? And my thought is that maybe over the years you've seen companies who have that big, hairy, audacious goal, the BHAG, versus maybe those who don't. Any thoughts on this? The differences?
Well, yeah, I think that the companies that have the big, hairy, audacious goals are the ones that can let the people and usually in a successful company, you have a visionary, and then you have you might say the person is the operational piece, the guy or gal that is actually laying plans to put this vision into place. Oftentimes the entrepreneur, he's the big idea guy and so forth, and they have the right-hand person that he asks to do all the back office stuff to keep things going. So when companies have this terrific vision moving forward, and they have the people that understand what that vision is, they're able to put those pieces of the puzzle, those operational pieces, or select the markets or the customers or the geographies that they want to go into first a lot, I don't want to say easier, but it seems to be more natural in moving the business forward.
I just wanted to comment that the 4 points you have here: clarity, alignment, purpose, and priorities. I've often heard it said that the leader's job primarily is clarity.
Absolutely.
Because people throughout the entire organization have to march to the beat of that vision, if you will. And it's not always numbers that motivate people. So sometimes this vision, even though it could be numeric, meaning we want to be this big by this time, but a lot of times that the numbers don't motivate people. So I think having that clarity and how maybe it makes a difference in the world, which goes back to purpose, but then ensuring that the entire organization is aligned. Anyway, these are not easy. I'm just saying these are not easy things to do.
No. And that's why, and I just put these words up here above the picture again and again and again. I think it was Patrick Lencioni in his book wrote that in order to move a business forward, and the leader really in a way is like a champion, is championing this vision all the time. And they have that saying in marketing is that it takes 7 times for someone to hear a marketing ad or an advertisement before they actually get it. This is a part of the job of a CEO, is talking about this vision all the time and connecting the vision to the things that they're doing today, and how what they're doing today will help them get to the vision that they're going to. Um, it's really important that the CEO or the leader of the business continue to send that message to the organization, and pretty soon they'll know exactly why they're doing what they're doing, because it's going to get us, you might say, to the moon and
Yeah.
back. Okay.
Repetition, repetition. Yes.
The next piece is culture. In leadership, creating a culture is probably the most critical aspect of being successful. You can have the big dream and have this vision of your purpose and so forth, but if you don't have the team behind you that is working together, you're not going to get there. You're going to spend more time in conflicts and compromising the things that you're doing to make room for someone in particular because they don't get along with somebody else. I mean, all of these cultural things come in and wind up becoming roadblocks as an organization. So, in the place that it starts with is values. Uh, you often hear about mission, vision, values, and yeah, okay, mission, vision, values. Well, mission, vision, values. Why is values so important? Because it outlines how we are going to work together as an organization. And people that have similar values simply work really well together, and because they hold those norms of respect, or the other can-do attitudes, or
Yeah.
whatever the values are that are innate in an organization, and it becomes more of a team.
You're right. By the way, I'll mention that I worked with a business. It was a salon owner in Seattle, and he owned 3 salons. And he said he took the staff of those 3 salons, and they'd had the discussion for a couple of days about their values. What was important to them? What did they value? And he said they all got on the same page. And he had about 3 years of remarkable growth in the company, and then it started to fade, and things started to go left and down and plateau. And he is finding this friction and struggle. And he said he thought about it and he wondered what the difference was. And he said, I didn't continue that value based conversation. And we had half of our people were new people who were not part of that initial conversation.
Right.
And the values had slid in a lot of different directions. So I think what you're saying is very right.
It's interesting. And when small businesses get started, the entrepreneur often hires somebody that he likes, or that she likes, or that they get along with, and they make a great team. And the person who's doing the hiring is the person who is actually setting up the culture, because they're hiring based on their values and the people that are going to work with them. But the minute that, I don't want to say the minute, but as the company
Mhm.
develops and the hiring responsibility goes someplace else, then they start hiring based on not necessarily values and who I'm going to work with, but maybe the immediate need. And I can tell you for a fact that in the company that I ran, on numerous occasions, we get in a bind and we hire based on the fog index. Can they fog a mirror? Yep. If they're
Yeah.
alive, put them on. We got work to do. And in the long run, that's not
Yeah.
helpful. We wind up hiring people that don't necessarily align with the values, don't necessarily get along with others the way we would like them to do, and we have to regress. And the first time we get into a situation where there is a recession or a downturn and a layoff, the first people to go are the ones that don't fit.
Right.
And we have to then the next time business we get to hiring again, we have to train up and train other people. And that's when you want to do the hiring based on not only competencies but also on values.
Yeah.
So
I like that.
oops, pardon me, I moved the wrong direction. So let me move back here. Oops, I moved the wrong way. Sorry. So let me move one. There we are. So what we want to do is hire based on value, mentor, coach, and train the team based on the the skill sets that we need, but also being mindful of how that team member fits in to our values. One of the things that is really important is evaluating that team from time to time. And it's called team building, but what it really is, it's evaluating the team based on these values. And this is a matrix here that we've made up. And it's an exercise that I run with with organizations that I work with, and we identify who the A players are. And those A players are the ones that are high on value and high on performance. These are our rock stars. This is where we want to hire and keep all of our people, is in that upper right quadrant. On occasion, though, we hire people in that don't have the skills and the knowledge. And those are the B players that want to be A players, and we want them to be A players because they're high on values. They really fit well in the organization. We just need to give them the tools to move along. On occasion, we'll hire people that are also, we think that they're B players, but I was a personnel manager at one point in time in my career for about 3 years. And I have so much respect for the personnel managers and what they need to do in order to recruit and hire people. But you're only so successful. You can't hire perfect each and every time, because unless you've worked with them, you don't know them succinctly as a person.
That's very true.
So when they get into the organization, you find out, they don't have the skills. And the other thing is they really don't have some of the values that we thought they had as a person or as people. And they are not fitting in to the organization. They are maybe creating conflict, or
this is where the friction comes.
That's right.
Yeah.
They're creating disappointment because they don't show up to work on time. They're not following the instructions as we've given them. So they fall into that C player category, and those C players need to move along. There's no other way to put it, but they would fit better in a different organization than the one that you're running. Mm-hmm. So C players have to be moved out, and you need to continually recruit again with the idea and the hope that you're going to get those B players that turn into A players.
Randy, you're probably going to say this, but a good way to lose your A players is to really focus on or keep your C players.
That is a great point, Kirk. There's nothing that you can do more inspirationally than to have more A players. A players love other A players because they challenge them.
Yeah.
They love having them on their team. So in the minute that you have C players and nobody's doing anything about it, boy, the faith in leadership and the faith in management, it starts taking some pretty big hits.
Yeah.
Like, what are these guys thinking? Why are they keeping this guy? And it does make A players want to go someplace else because they want to be in an environment that challenges them and don't want to be around a bunch of drama because it's caused by people that really shouldn't be in the organization.
Yeah.
Speaking of drama, the last category is what we call toxic A players. And these are the players, and oftentimes you find it more often in the sales arena, where you have somebody that, man, when they are out selling, they are terrific. And the customers love them and so forth. But when they come back into the organization, they may be dictatorial and arrogant, and they feel that, they're so good at what they do that everybody ought to bow down.
Yeah.
And that becomes a real contentious situation where you have people that perform really well don't get along too well in the organization. We had one guy at the company that I led that we hired back 6 times.
Oh, geez.
The reason that he went away is that he couldn't get to work regularly. And finally, they pulled their hair out and they said, Mike, you got to go. And they did that 6 times, and our HR department hired him back. Why? Because he was really good at the thing that he did. He was a great welder. and he could weld like nobody else. But the problem was is that when he was there, he was terrific, but oftentimes he wasn't there. So the rest of the team had to pick up for him, and it finally got to a point where it was worse to have the individual you didn't know whether they were going to be there or not, than the guy who was really great, but he was not there when you needed him. So yeah, it happens not just in sales; it happens in other areas as well.
You're mentioning this is kind of an ongoing evaluation that you do for your team.
Ongoing, yeah. I think if you take time out and you take all of your people in the organization, and you by groups, of course you can't fit all the names sometimes on all this, but you can fit probably 15 to 20 names on this chart, and you just go ahead and write them in on a whiteboard. And what it does is it gets the conversation in leadership going around their perspective on certain individuals. So there'll be a manager who puts John up in the A player category, and all of a sudden Carol will say, "What? Do you know, my observation is this, you know, they're good at a couple things, but then remember this and remember this." Oh, well, yeah. And so the conversation begins, and you get a real objective, even though it's subjective, and you get more input on exactly how valuable certain people are to the organization in this matrix. At the end of the day, when you have your categories of C and A players, leadership has work to do in recruiting and replacing those people that are in those positions, so that you get everybody into that B and A player category.
That's good.
It's a terrific.
This is a great matrix.
Yeah, great matrix, inspires fantastic discussion in an organization. Okay, moving on, leading by example. There's simply no replacement for, and here we are talking about it today in our politics, not to bring politics into this, but wearing masks. You know, the politicians who elect to wear masks and not wear masks, and the controversy that it's creating within our country about what we should do about social distancing and wearing masks. Leading by example is so important because it sets the standard around which others will follow. And that's in your company, it builds trust, it builds respect, and it also teaches people about the right things to do in the organization. Okay, moving down our pyramid from vision and culture into strategy. This is where, you know, the rubber hits the road in terms of really building your business. And if I was to, if you were to take a look on Amazon for the number of books on strategy, I think this is their biggest number, 40,000 books. On strategy. So, and if you did the math, if you read one book per day, it'd only take 109 years to read all of those books. So there's plenty of information on strategy. So it helps to be able to frame it in a way that that you can move forward and understand how to select your strategy and what that really means to your organization. So a couple examples. One is Jack Welch. Of course, Jack was one of the terrific business leaders of the 20th century, and fantastic guy. But he had a simple policy, and his idea is strategy is not a lengthy action plan. It's the evolution of a central idea through continually changing circumstances. So Jack's central idea to his organization is that if we can't be number one or number two in a particular market, we don't want to be in it.
Wow.
And so that drove all kinds of decision making down to lower levels. So when they talked about growing in a particular marketplace with a product or a service, the question they asked is, can we be number one or number two in this market? And if it was, nah, we can't, then they just set it aside.
Wow.
You know, we're not going there. But if they could, then they made a case to Jack, and they got the support, and they went in, you know, guns blazing into that marketplace to be number one and number two. Really helped grow General Electric.
I can think of a lot of companies who would benefit by that type of thinking because a lot of times they fall in love with a product or a technology and they say, I'm going to go do this because I like it, but they don't necessarily think in terms of how can I win with customers and become, top in that category or top in that niche or, top in that segment. So they, as a result, it's I don't know how to say, very ill-placed strategy.
It's confusing and it's wasteful. Um, what tends to happen in the growth cycle with businesses, an entrepreneurial business will start out with a great product or have landed a great customer.
Yeah,
And they'll ride that product or ride that customer or handful of customers to this peak. And all of a sudden, the growth starts to flatten out.
yeah,
And the reason that it flattens out, they've exhausted the market for the
yeah,
product, or they've exhausted the products they can sell to the market, and which may be just a couple of customers. And so the entrepreneur does what he or she knows best, and so they add more products.
yeah.
Well, it may not be the product that the customers want,
Right.
or they try to add more customers that also don't need the product. And so they wind up having this huge amount of waste in
Yeah,
time spent on developing new products or time spent on new customers that really don't are actually too expensive to maintain as a customer. So in other words, they're flailing
yeah,
without really being thoughtful about their products, their markets, their customers, and geographies. Those are the strategic arenas: products, customers, markets, and geographies.
and I've heard it said that customer obsession or customer focus is what kind of eliminates a lot of those problems. Where a lot of times it's easy as an entrepreneur to love your product, your technology, or your solution, and so you're focused a little bit more on why you like the product versus why your customer will like the product. And so anyway, I see some
Absolutely.
opportunities there.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So another way to look at it, a strategy, is the way Michael Porter is one of the foremost business thinkers in the in the nation, and he's a Harvard professor, and his viewpoint was that strategy is the creation of a unique and valuable position involving a different set of activities from your competitors. And so essentially what that meant is that you have to differentiate yourself. If you're up against a competitor that is selling the exact same thing as you are, guess what? The consumer is going to make the decision on
yeah,
who's the lowest price. And it's a race to the bottom. If
yeah.
there's no value added or nothing that differentiates you, you are going to go, be selling based on price and lowering your margins. And it's a no-win, and it's a death spiral is what it is.
Well, I always say that this plays out on the grocery store shelf with, say, toothpaste or mouthwash. When every toothpaste and every mouthwash does the same thing, price becomes the determination until
Correct.
somebody says, my toothpaste will make your breath fresher or your teeth whiter. So again, in comparison to your competition,
That's right.
how's that going to be perceived by your customers? So,
And that's where brand really comes into perspective, and your confidence in the brand. Do I want to take a risk at on this product here? Maybe it's something for my health. Do I want to risk on that cough syrup, or do I really want something that is a name brand that I can count on? And I know, well, who knows, but it's in the mind of the consumer.
it is.
So how you differentiate your business, and there's some great examples here in the Northwest. A couple of great examples. Nordstrom's. Well, I mean, they're selling clothes, for crying out loud. I mean, they're selling shoes, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
But they're one of the most successful clothing retailers in the nation, if not the world. And they differentiate themselves in this market in two ways. One is they have developed their brand to be known as the highest quality clothing and shoes and apparel in the marketplace. And number two, they have a legendary customer service
Yeah.
and a place that you never get an argument about bringing something back,
Right.
or always know that somebody's going to be there to help you respectfully, not nagging you, but they'll be they're always within eyesight, and they leave you to yourself, but the moment that you need help, they're there in spades. And
Yeah.
there's, I could tell you probably 4 terrific Nordstrom stories, and I won't
Yeah.
bore you, bore you at
Oh,
this time.
sure.
But I mean, they're phenomenal at that. And then Starbucks. I mean, it's
Yeah.
coffee, right? How do you differentiate coffee? Well, they did it so many different ways and customized it, allowed the consumer to ask for that peppermint latte with skinny latte, that these designer coffee drinks that
Yeah.
they can order up. How's the regular coffee shop going to compete with that when they just filter some coffee into a pot and
Yeah.
don't? And that's why you that's why you pay $3 or $4 for a cup of coffee, is because you get it exactly the way you want it.
That's
So
right.
these are these differentiating features. So what actually differentiates your business from your competitors is where you want to sell. And that means knowing your customer, your core customer, the one that buys your premium products, one that talks about you in social media and
Yeah.
gives you that uh,
Word of mouth.
reputation, that great reputation, and they love you, and you can love to have that type of customer. And once you define that core customer that loves you, that buys for the highest price, and tells everybody that this is the only product or service they ought to buy, that you want to,
That's magic.
yeah, you want to build your marketplace around that characteristic and that particular type of consumer. And that's another way you approach strategy.
Yeah.
Okay. Next is the last piece is structure and execution. Okay, so you've got your vision, you've got your culture, and now you have your strategy. Now what? Well, now you have to put it into action. You have to operationalize it. You have to put the right structure in place, and that's part of the leader's job, is not only to have that vision and build that culture and how you're going to best go about it, but to operationalize it. And if you look at, I like to use sports analogies. If you look at soccer teams, there's infinite number of different formations that a soccer team will have, but the coach has to determine how the team best works together to deliver that result, or what is the competition, how are we going to outflank the competition. And so they structure their business appropriately. And in the business world, an organizational chart will typically look like this, and this is how it's structured for the particular marketplace. And so you have to determine where those areas of influence are within the organization that are going to best operationalize. So you're responsible for structure, putting the right structure in place. And lastly, as it amounts to execution, you have to be able to take those operational units, set clear and measurable objectives, the old SMART objectives, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely, the SMART objective. And make sure everyone understands what that objective is. Make sure you have KPIs, or key performance indicators, and balanced metrics. Balanced metrics meaning you have both leading and lagging indicators. Leading being the actions that produce results.
Right.
As a salesperson, the number of calls I make are going to lead to a proposal, which is going to eventually lead to a customer. So I need to increase the number of calls that I make. That's a leading indicator.
Yeah.
The lagging indicator would be the number of customers that I have actually brought on board, or products that I've sold. And lastly, the way that you stay focused is by having daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and annual meetings
Mm-hmm.
that make sure the team is aligned, they're focused on those metrics and those objectives, and that they are getting all the support and all the decisions that need to be made and resources that needs to be applied to succeeding at those goals. So in a nutshell, wasn't quite a nutshell, but
Okay.
succinctly, the way I frame
Yeah.
leadership,
Great framework.
is in the area of vision, culture, strategy, and then the operational structure and execution of those strategies.
It seems like to me a lot of times the day-to-day maybe grind or the day-to-day friction of getting the job done consumes most leaders' time.
Absolutely.
And they're concerned about the orders coming in, they're concerned about the orders going out. So how do you recommend somebody who's really caught up in the day-to-day to pull themselves back to do maybe a little bit more of the vision, the culture, and the strategy work?
What I found, you're absolutely right, is when you are inside the machine and being in manufacturing for 40
Yeah,
years, I mean, you can hear the machinery from your office. You know,
right.
it's doing those things, and it just gets it's. I love the environment because it just gets you excited about what's going
Yeah,
on, and you get involved in it. You drop into a couple of meetings here and there, and they've got issues and so forth, and you
yeah,
love the dialogue that's going on. But I found that that when I took business trips and
yeah,
I would be literally at 30,000 feet with a book or thinking and talking maybe to somebody who's traveling with me, those, getting out of the office, getting away, and here in these times that we're experiencing now, working from home, this can really give you time to separate yourself from being on the front lines,
yeah,
where it's important that you are on the front lines from time to time so that you get a feel for what's happening. But you also need to be away from it to think. And getting away from the office, also going and visiting customers. One of the most important, I think, leadership attributes that I didn't mention today is being an ambassador.
hmm,
And being an ambassador for the company, those usually it's the 80-20 rule, is 20% of your customers are generating 80% of the revenue. Visiting those 20% of the customers is really important, that that they appreciate, or that you appreciate their business. And also suppliers,
yeah,
getting out and seeing what's happening with your supply base and what those suppliers are doing. So many times we've discovered that suppliers are doing other things that we could use
yeah,
than what we're buying, and had no idea that you guys did that. And we could actually replace or have one supplier supply four things,
yeah,
four suppliers supplying one thing each. And so getting out of the office place, seeing especially customers and suppliers, and also visiting with your support cast, which is, your bankers, accountants, and so
yeah,
forth. It's amazing what you can learn from
yeah.
those service providers as well. So
So
getting out
Randy,
of the office is the short
I
answer.
I wanted to confirm something that you've talked about here, but back when I was in banking at Bank of America and U.S. Bank, and I would analyze hundreds of financial statements and even of manufacturers, and I would have to explain, why the numbers went up or why the numbers went down, but particularly when they went up, and I'd have to call the CEO and say, "Hey, I noticed you had this rise of revenue that I need to be able to explain to the loan committee." And he said, "Oh yeah, that's when." Uh, my management took over the operations and I was able to go out and talk to my customers and my suppliers and my bankers and my accountants. But almost every time there was a leap in growth, it had to do with what you just said, and that is they they actually got untied from the day-to-day operations of the business, and they then spent time in their industry. They went to conferences, they attended leadership type groups, but they were not tied down day to day, and it was a significant change in their revenue and earnings.
Yeah, one of the best experiences I had. My board actually, we were talking about our industry and how we should know more about our industry. And okay, know more about our industry. Well, exactly. What do you mean? He says, well, we should go out and see our competition. I went,
Yeah,
what? What do you mean? Go out and see our competition?
yeah,
And yeah, we should know. And then there's that saying: you should know more about know about and keep your enemies closer.
yeah. Your friends close and your enemies closer, right?
Yeah. I forget exactly how it goes, but anyway, and so I actually did. I made phone calls to our competition and just to say hello, and that
Yeah,
I'm going to be in your area sometime. Love to have a cup of coffee. And to a person, they said, absolutely, let's do it.
Yeah.
I found out that they were great people, had good companies, didn't get any factory tours,
Yeah.
didn't
Yeah.
expect to, but I did get to know my competition, and we were able to talk about industry information and industry activities that was helpful to confirm what I thought I already know, and sometimes there was a surprise or two. But
Yeah.
in
That's
fact,
so
through one
cool.
of those, we actually made an acquisition.
Oh,
The
wow.
individual, yeah, it was a smaller organization that was the CEO was ready to pass the keys along. So that happened.
Those opportunities come up as well.
Yeah.
That's
So
really that's great information, I think, for any of us. I think this is great. Been a great presentation.
very good.
Now, is this your last slide, or is there?
Nope, this is it. Yep, this is it.
Okay.
That's the end of it. Thank you, Kirk,
No,
for
I want
allowing
to.
me the opportunity to talk about something I'm very passionate about, and hopefully it can help others.
Well, I'm really hoping that this broadens the view and the vision, and also the job that really needs to be done by the leaders of camps type businesses. I think anybody would benefit, and I highly recommend Randy. He's been a member of camps almost the entire time we've been in business, and he's been a great friend and a great leader within the organization. So, Randy, we want to thank you today. Thank you for this.
Thanks, Kirk. I love manufacturing. It's what I know, and I would love to help any camp members that would like to sit down for a cup of coffee and just talk about it for a bit, or whether we want to engage sometime in something specific.
Randy's a good
Any-
person to sit down with. And so, thank you so much, Randy. Take
All
care.
right. Thanks, Kirk.